welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm
So
so
excited to
excited to
talk.
be here.
I am so excited to talk to you because
Yes.
I absolutely loved your book.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
So let's start with what I think is the easiest question, but sometimes people tell me is the hardest one, which is what made you want to become an author?
I feel like it is kind of tricky, I feel like, for me to answer that just because, I've always loved books. Even from when I was a kid, I was reading books and kind of falling into fantasy worlds and devouring, and then found my way to romance. And at that point, I was a teenager at this point when I was like, I want to write. I want to write my own story. And so I did, and then it was just kind of snowballed from there, really. So it's kind of just my love for storytelling and my love for reading and writing stories is just it's part of who I am. So it's hard to answer that. There's not one specific little moment where it was like, yeah, that's it.
It's a whole lifetime of it.
It is really, yeah.
So why do you like writing romance?
I well, preferably I read romance, so that's almost exclusively what I read. With the side of I do like general fiction, as long as the story is flowing and everything like that as well too. But there's something special about romance because you kind of know exactly what you're getting into, depending on the subcategory of romance for sure. But you always know that there's going to be two main characters who fall in love, who find, you know, bumps in the road along the way, but then eventually they find their way back to each other and everything typically ends up in a nice, clean little bow. So that's just what you expect with romance and it's what you get. And I love that. And I love, for me, I love writing and kind of in capturing the human experience and putting it onto page is really enjoyable for me.
So one of the things I know is that you're an indie author, and we are
Yes.
huge fans of indie authors. So what do you enjoy most about being an indie author?
I So there's kind of two different ways that you can go about publishing when you do feel ready to write, and it's traditional or there's indie. And indie just means independent, and I love that because that's exactly what it is. There's no one telling me what I have to write, no one telling me what I have to put on the cover, how I want to write my blurb, how I want to market it. It's kind of just, it's all up to me, which I love that because I can kind of tweak and change things as I go. Every year is different, every month is different. So it's kind of one of those things where you just do the best you can, but there's no one holding you back, only yourself kind of propelling it forward, as well as a really great community of, people like you and readers who just specifically seek out independent authors just to support them. So I love that aspect of it as well too.
So what is the most difficult aspect of it?
All of the above, everything that I just said. But really, though, because you're not backed by a major publishing house, that does kind of limit you from the start. You don't have the audience right away. So a lot of it is marketing and building connections and creating relationships. And a lot of that it can kind of bog you down because you're a full time author, but then you're also a full time marketer. You're a full time publishing house. So that can get to be a lot for sure. But
Very
it's worth it
quickly.
very quickly. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that writing the book, while that is like such a hard creative process, like there's so much, I wouldn't say like the real work starts after the book's done, but like a almost like an entire different level of work starts. It's
Yes.
almost just as hard.
Oh, it for sure. And it's non-stop. That's the thing is, the goal as an independent author is to get a backlist, something that can self-market itself so that as you're writing each book, you can kind of lay off the marketing of some of the other past books that you've written. But getting to that point is very difficult because you kind of have to write the book, market the book, write the book. It's kind of a non-stop sliding scale until you get to that point where your books are established enough and you've built those relationships. But the marketing game is forever.
It
Whereas,
really
yeah,
it
writing a
really
book
is.
is a short time. Yeah.
Well, and there's, I think one of the things I've always thought about is like when you write the book, there is an end because you get to like literally type the end
Literally,
on the
yes.
right on the
Yeah.
marketing admin side of being an indie author. There is no end. It's
Right.
never stop. So, which is fun because you do get to evolve it and you get to try lots of things differently like creatively
Absolutely.
that you wouldn't maybe get to do with a traditional publisher. But on the same token, a lot of times you're a team of like one. Or I like to say like, or like the other people in your life, like my husband, I call it voluntold. Like he got voluntold to do things, right? He was like volunteered, but he didn't raise his hand.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
you know, those times where like, you know, people that help you out, but in reality, it's a lot of work on indie
Yeah.
authors. And that's why I have so much respect for them because I think oftentimes some of the best work is written by indie authors.
It can be, absolutely. Yeah, just because, there is no one holding back the creativity. It is 100% us. It's 100% just whatever we can come up with and put on page. So that's where I do think being independent makes you challenge yourself more. It makes you kind of grow as much as possible. Absolutely.
Yes. So, your latest book, Everything in Between,
Yes.
how would you describe it in 10 words or less?
In 10 words or less. Okay, should I count? Jersey Matthews is a pop star. She's the, world famous pop star, and she is trapped in her career. And the biggest thing is she is looking for some way out, and that is what she finds in Hayes Vogt, who is the pop star, or that he's the quarterback for the Milwaukee Majestics. That was probably more than 10 words, but that was pretty good.
It was pretty good. So, how did this whole idea for the book come to you? Like, how did you know you wanted to write this story?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been, kind of a lot of focus on pop star, football player type of situation
Whatever
over
do
the
you
last year.
mean?
I don't know. But really, my goal with all of my books is I want to bring out the most emotion as possible. So my goal is to find some emotion that I'm trying to establish, bottle it up, and put it on page. And so that was what my goal was with everything in between, where I was like, I wanted to just grab that excitement and that newfound, I don't know, ecstaticness really for a new exciting relationship that's in the spotlight. But then also on the back end, I'm like, what more is there? Because we just get that surface part, even the public for Jersey and Hayes, they just get a little tidbit of it. But I'm like, what is actually going on between these two characters? And so for that, obviously, there was a fine line to dance with that for sure. But I knew right away who Jersey was. She was my main character right away, and Hayes quickly followed that. It was one of the easiest, most fun books to write, just because it was fun for me to learn these characters and learn what they do, and then learn kind of how each one of them supports the other. Absolutely.
Does this mean that I take it that you're a big Swiftie?
Possibly. Yeah.
Same.
Yes. I can neither
Yeah,
confirm nor deny these allegations.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I am the 0.01% of Spotify listeners for Taylor Swift every year. So,
Exactly.
well, and that's part of the reason why I love the book is I think it kind of played off of something that we see that's really predominant in pop culture right now, but has a totally different spin to it, right? While like it kind of, I would say you're probably inspired by what happened with them. The story is very different. What
Yeah,
Jersey
absolutely.
experiences, the challenges that she has, their relationship, what he goes through. It's I think one of the things that was really great. It was easy to say like, "Oh, this reminds me of like a love story that I love seeing happen in real life." And
Exactly.
but also seeing like two totally different people and kind of their world.
For sure.
So, thinking about this book, how long did it take you to write it?
I started writing this book, it was beginning of May of 2024. And then I finished the first draft end of September into October. Then from there, the revision process started with my editor. And the book was actually really 100% finished this year of April or May. So it was almost a full year of writing and revising. It was a lengthy revision process for this book, but it was so fun. I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
Is that normal for you, or do you find like every book's a little bit different?
Every book is different. The revision process is one of my favorites. It's, writing the first draft is kind of difficult for me because I'm trying to figure out the characters, I'm trying to figure out where they're going. I usually have an end game kind of in mind, but getting lost along the way is something that I do quite often. So that's why the first draft can sometimes take me the longest. but then revising, usually with the help of a skilled, amazing editor, is one of my favorite things to do because they can kind of see where I'm going and then give me a little bit more direction. And then from there, it's like takes off. And it's so much fun to really polish the book and go deeper into the characters and really figure out the story that I'm trying to tell and make it exactly what it is supposed to be.
I love that. Well, and I think one of the things that I like to think about, and I feel like authors say a lot too, is you want like your final book to be perfect, right? But your first draft just needs to get written.
That's exactly correct. Yes, that's what I have a critique group of some author friends, and that's pretty much what we say to each other at least once a week is just get it done. Just get the
Just
words
get
on
it
the
done.
page. We can fix it later.
Exactly. Like a shitty first draft is still done. And
Yes.
then we work on the polish. And I think that's just such an important thing because oftentimes I think the book that you see in a first draft to the final book, while the probably like the main part of the story is there, there's so much evolution into
Yeah.
how it's told, what gets
Hmm.
pulled out. So,
Absolutely.
what was the easiest part of the book to write?
It's for me. It's usually the middle of the book. It was the same thing with this book, where it was like a lot of the more fluffy, the fun scenes were pretty easy for me to write, just because it was enjoyable to explore these characters and explore how they interact with each other. Um, but probably I would say the first 25-ish, give or take a few extra chapters that were added later, was really easy for me to write just because it was getting that going, getting that started. So from there, it kind of started to veer off, and I'm like, okay, where am I going with this? Got to rein myself back in and kind of stay on track. But it, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What was the hardest thing to write?
The ending. So the ending of this book was very tricky for me because um, figuring out the motivation behind Jersey and then figuring out the motivation behind her manager. Um, that was that was probably one of the lengthiest process that took the longest for me to just sit on and think about and okay, what is happening here? Why is this happening? And then the culmination of it was kind of um, a little trickier because there were a few directions that I thought about taking it, but then I ended up settling, this, and my editor was a big part of that as well too.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that was kind of fun about your book to read is there, when you're thinking about like what motivates each of the characters, there were so many possibilities.
Yes, yeah,
And so it was kind of fun to like have hypotheses of like, oh, what could be happening. So, and then like you learn a little bit more as you continue reading. And I think I read
absolutely.
your book in like less than a day.
Oh wow, that was fast.
Like at the like I was at the yeah, I'm 99% positive. Like I read it at the pool in a single day.
That's perfect.
Um,
It's definitely a pool type book, yeah, or a
well,
beach
and
read
it
or something like that.
exactly, and it was just hard to put down because it was just so much fun, and you there. I was like, with every chapter, I was like, well, I want to know more. I want to know more. I want to know more.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. Yes.
So one of the big themes that we learn in the book really early on is that Jersey has a really extremely restrictive contract that she's under for the next 3 years. And it's a big kind of theme throughout the entire book. Why was that such a critical part of the book and her story for you?
That kind of goes back to character development too. So usually when I am trying to get a plot line kind of figured out, I start at point A and I'm like, okay, the end is point XYZ. How do I get my character from being where they are at point A to being at point XYZ? And why haven't they done that already is the biggest thing. So for Jersey, which we do learn this pretty quickly in the book, so it's not necessarily a spoiler, but she is really restricted by her contract. And so that is what has kept her from doing this the whole time. Um, and she really hasn't felt like she was able to do it, to able to kind of step into that metaphorical spotlight and kind of put herself first. So that was the journey, was to kind of figure out why does she want this? Why hasn't she done it? And how can she do it? So just all of the questions that I needed to ask to figure out who Jersey is as a dynamic main character.
The other thing I loved about it too is I think while I obviously cannot relate to being a famous pop star under a very restrictive contract, one of the things that it made me think a lot about is how often all of us as people often have these situations where others put us kind of restrict who we are or think about us in a certain way, and we kind of restrict our own behaviors and actions as a result
Yeah,
based on
for
who
sure.
people want us to be. So I think there was like a really nice like overall lesson that you could take from that too.
Yeah. Jersey, when I first started writing the book, it was equal parts a story about Jersey and it was a story about Hayes and kind of their separate careers. As I got into the writing process and especially into the editing process, it really became, oh my gosh, this is a Jersey story. Like it really kind of went more her direction. And so that was really fun to explore as well too. Just really leaning into that character.
So both Jersey and Hayes have impressive careers, which just that alone can make having a relationship complicated, especially when it's long distance that we see with them. And then it's further amplified because they both have very public careers.
Yes.
So, how much research did you have to do to ensure like the challenges that they face in the book were delivered authentically? Because it does feel very authentic based on like kind of what I would say, like, like I've read from just public relationships across all different types of celebrities, long distance relationships, etc.
Yeah. I would say the football aspect of it came a little bit easier to me. Just I come from a football family, so my dad is big into football, and me and my husband are also big into football as well too. So that part was actually a little bit easier. The more detail thing is those are kind of hard to find. So there's a lot of like documentaries, a lot of watching interviews with players and trying to pick up the little pieces of what they share their life being, and then kind of piecing it all together. Because we really, you see the players go out onto the field during season. You sometimes get a little bit of them during preseason, off season, so on and so forth. But like the finer details of what their schedule is like, that's kind of hard to get a hold of without actually getting into that side of the world, which I don't really have access to at this point in my career. Maybe someday, but that was a little bit trickier. I did find some documentaries that were very helpful with that, kind of getting that behind the scenes look to it. And then for Jersey, that kind of information's a little bit easier to access, a little bit easier to find. So there was quite a bit of research that did go into it, especially on the back end of it, the legal effects of her contracts and whatnot.
So, throughout the book, we jump back and forth between POVs for Jersey and Hayes. How do you determine which POV to use for each chapter when they're both in the chapter?
That kind of, I always like to say that's a little bit fluid. So I kind of start with an outline the way that I write. I number the chapters. I usually aim for about 30 to 40 chapters, just in my roughest outline. And I say, okay, this is what I want to happen at this point, and it kind of just depends on where it falls. If I am in the middle of writing it and I finish a chapter getting ready to go into the next one and it's the wrong character, then in that case I can just switch it. Because I start with the very uniform, first this is a Jersey chapter, then a Hayes chapter, then a Jersey, so on and so forth. But then that is not usually how it ends up. It usually is a couple of Jersey chapters right in a row or a couple of Hayes chapters right in a row. So it's a little bit more flexible depending on where the story's going, for sure. Or if I'm adding in chapters in the editing process.
Have you ever thought about writing the same chapter from both POVs?
I I have. I don't typically do that because I usually like to keep the story moving forward. There may be some parts that overlap if a character is conversing with another person trying to kind of recap it, but that's just a stylistic choice where I usually want each chapter to be propelling the reader forward as well too. I don't want them to have to read the same thing more than once or so on like that.
Yeah, I was mainly thinking, which we'll talk about in a second, but some of the spicy scenes would be great, like
Yeah.
as a bonus chapter to have like the other person's POV.
Yes, absolutely. For that, I'm totally into that. I think that is great. But as far as like the actual plot line goes, I usually try to just keep it, chronologically. But bonus chapters are always free game.
So speaking of spicy scenes, we're big fans of them on the show. How do you determine when and how much spice to include in your books?
Each character is different, so I kind of have an idea of I'm like, okay, this would be a good place for a spicy scene, and then in my outline I'll just put spicy scene or I like something oh they kiss or something like that just to give myself a little idea that we want to kind of up the spice there. That does not always work out. Like I was saying, my outline is very flexible. And each character is different, and each character, just like each person is different in their own level of spiciness in their day-to-day life, so it's kind of fun to figure out where each character goes in that aspect. I knew with the two of them, Hayes and Jersey, that it would be pretty fun with them being on opposite sides of the world or opposite sides of the country to add in some long distance type spice. So I knew right away that that would be part of it, but figuring the rest out as I went was pretty fun as well too. Each of my main characters they do tend to surprise me either way. If they're spicy, if they're not spicy. The book I'm writing right now is actually, the first draft that I just finished is actually a little bit lower on the spice, which that was kind of surprising to me too, but we'll see. It may end up spicier in revisions, you never know.
Well, and I think it kind of always depends too on like the plot and where each character is in the story too, because I think there are books that you read where like there's spice thrown in. I'm like, I don't feel like they would do, because I feel invested in characters, right? And I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like they would do that right now. Like, why are we
Yes.
doing this? And there are other times where I'm like, oh, for the love.
Right. That's
So,
my preference as well too. Just when I'm reading, I don't want there to be, I mean, we all love spice, let's be real, but I don't want there to be too much. I do want generally a plot line, and there is a time and place for it for sure when you want to just read something purely spicy versus something that is a little bit more plot driven, and that tends to be how my books are. They're plot driven with a little side of spice.
so what is your favorite line or passage from the book and why?
So I really like the whole kind of premise of the book, that I want the good, the bad, and everything in between, just because that's what we all want when we're reading romance, is we want to see the two characters kind of accept each other for their flaws and for the things that make them great and all of the little aspects of what makes them who they are in between. So um, the title of the book, Everything in Between, came after that sentiment from Hayes. So it just seemed perfect for it to be that name.
What? So I know you mentioned you just finished you're working on your next book?
Yes, I'm always working on my next book.
Next
Yes.
book.
Yeah. So, oh, go
What
ahead.
can you tell us about it?
So this is actually the book I just finished. The first draft is a second book in a trilogy series. I actually have the first one here to show you too. So this is my book, His Perfect Canvas, which is it's a art driven trilogy. So book one came out last summer, and I just finished the first draft of book two, and I'm about 30% into the third book. So trying to kind of tie those up and finish that world off.
Awesome. Like as a goal, do you try and release a certain number of books per year or kind of like how do you think about that?
Um, I generally, so this is really only my second year kind of being in this indie world. So my first year I released 2 books. Last year I released 4 books. One of them was a duet, so it was kind of a continuation of the story. I don't really count that. So really it was 4 full novels, but it was kind of 3 books there, 3 stories. This year I knew that I wanted to publish Everything in Between, but then I wasn't really sure how the writing process would go for the remainder of this trilogy. So I kind of was like, if I could get 2 books published this year, that would be great. If I don't, it is what it is, because my goal is to always put out a great story. If I don't get it published this year, then there's always next year. And again, that comes back to the beauty of being an independent author, because I can just set my own rules here.
You can, which I think is well, and you get to determine what a good story is.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Late Night Reads. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Late Night Reads Podcast, and check out latenightreads.com for even more information about all the books we're reading. If you loved today's episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. and share the show with your fellow book lovers.